broadcast this show every weekday morning on this 19th day of November 2024. All we want to talk about is priority. When it comes to banking, priority banking is the way to go. And the only bank to think about is which one?
Standard Chartered.
Very good. Tell us more about it.
So you can imagine, I want you to imagine that it is you who's the priority.
Okay.
And it's about growing your wealth and investing wisely and putting away something, education for your children perhaps, or taking that little bit of shilling that you've been able to make and then being able to set it and put it away. So you can imagine a bank that is in 55 unique markets around the world with 110 years of expertise. What are you teaching these guys?
What?
Well, the question you should ask is, what do you think they can teach you?
Exactly. They have it all and they know, okay, this is what we can tell you. This is how we can advise you. This is how we can lead you to be able to make these decisions. And then being able to store this wealth in whatever currency you wish. You want to store it in Kenya shillings? Go right ahead. You want your wealth to remain in US dollars? No problem. British pounds? Okay. Euro? Even better. Whatever it is that you choose and you say, this is how I want it to go. This is how I want my future wealth to look like. Standard Chartered says, you know what? I'm gonna hold your hand. Walk you through the thing.
The song was I Want to Hold Your Hand, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think they were referring to Standard Chartered.
They were. I have decided that they were referring to Standard Chartered Bank and what Standard Chartered Bank can do for you. So you want to know more information about how you can actually be one who is considered a priority? Prioritybanking.ke at sc.com.
Priority is not just about banking, Priority is just anything about finance. For example, Standard Chartered, treats you as priority as their customer. They think about how they can help you grow your wealth. The government also treats you as priority, as a source of revenue. They think about how much money they can get from you on a
that's
daily
where we're going. All right.
basis.
See? Okay.
It works very well. And that's why Kuria Kimani, the chairman of the Finance and Planning Committee of the National Assembly, is not in Nairobi today. He's somewhere, Oko, talking to people, treating them as priority and asking them their opinion, because the government is looking at ways in which they want to make business easier, make your life easier, so that then you can give them more money. Okay, there are 6 bills right now under consideration by the National Assembly. It's considering the Public Finance Amendment Management Amendment Bill number 3 and number 4, the Public Procurement and Disposal Amendment Bill, Business Laws Amendment Bill, Tax Procedures Amendment Bill, and Tax Laws Amendment Bill. All of them is just about what?
More money. Oh, sorry. Priority.
Well,
Getting
yes.
them. It's the government getting its priorities right. It needs money. Okay?
Yeah.
And we have decided let's have this conversation about how do we actually understand. Did we know that there were 6 bills? And
Let's
they're
start
seeking
there
bills
first of all.
on the 6 bills.
Gee.
And what are these bills all about? There's 2 people who do everything that they do on a daily basis, thinking about budget. Their own domestic budget, hopefully, but national budgets as well. Okay? Dr. Abraham Rugo-Murillo is the executive director at Budgeti Hub. When did you start calling it Budgeti Hub? The last time you were here, you told us something about it.
So we were transitioning, and in July 26th, we officially changed our name from International Budget Partnership Kenya, formerly leaving the global organization, and now rooted Kenyan, Pan-African, and going deeper in the work of budgets.
Okay.
And that,
budget.
Budgeti Kiswahili.
The budget.
The budget. Sounds even better.
Budget.
Like baguette.
Get local iterations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Karibu sana, Daktari, and Cuba Houghton, who is an economist as well at Budgeti Hub. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Very good. Good to have you here, Cuba.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr.
It
It has to go, right?
had to. I was like, okay, do I say it? Do I not? Okay, let me just.
Okay. So we want to understand from you, this issue of all these tax laws and the amendment. And Cuba, it's good that you're here because you are in that age category called the Gen Z, right?
Proudly.
So let's actually understand from the Gen Z perspective, what do these laws mean? Because we saw what Gen Zs did the other day. We want to see whether we can understand whether they are going to do this.
Whether we can relate what we saw with the understanding
of these
things.
things, right? Sawa City, please welcome them with today's proverb.
Yes. Our proverbs for last week, this week, and a few more weeks to come will be from sub-Saharan Africa. We're in the country of Burundi, Republic of Burundi. Do not look up a tree. Well, do not look up a microphone.
Do not touch a microphone.
Do not breathe into a microphone. Okay. Do not look up a tree that you know you are not supposed to climb.
Do not look up a tree that you know you are not supposed to climb.
Do you know, this thing reminds me of some silly statement I heard where someone says, why do dogs chase cars they have no intentions of driving?
It's the thrill.
Yeah, that's a good one. Kiba, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
I think it's two parts. One is probably it's a lesson on temptation, which is don't look at perhaps things that you can't access, or maybe things that aren't good for you or not accessible. And the other one is just generally a principle perhaps of ambition, right? Don't try and achieve things maybe that are outside your reach, or that maybe you're not supposed to do.
I think for me, I've been. It's really do not tempt fate. Do not try to push expectations for something that you definitely know you're not supposed to be focusing, like the kind of current conversation we are having. You don't provide services, but you still want to gain something out of it in form of taxation. You are not supposed to actually be eyeing that. But definitely, it's of course a stronger message on temptation and the things you desire that you should actually be focusing. So it's about focus on the right things.
Focus on the right things.
Yeah.
Don't be too ambitious. So this particular bills are going through amendment now. They're to impact the current budget, is it?
Correct.
Okay. There's also another headline in the Business Daily about the next year's financial budget.
Correct.
Where, according to Treasury planning and what they're presenting, is they'd like to raise 2.732 trillion shillings as tax revenue in the financial year 2025-26. Currently, their target is 2.389 trillion shillings. That means they're looking to raise some extra 343 billion shillings, which will come in the form of our finance bill next year. 343 billion. How much did we reject this year?
344.
344. So basically, they're now giving up. 343 billion. I come here and say, Mom, can I get a sweet? No. Go out. Come back. Mom, can I get a sweet? Okay, yeah, you've been a good boy. You haven't been, maybe. They're hoping that will happen. But let's start with the current ones. What is the story behind these 6 bills, Dr. Terry?
Good. So first of all, I think it's important we put this in context that taxation is a form of revenue mobilization. The same way you go to your work, you are paid a salary. So taxation is supposed to help you raise revenues. And those revenues are not an end in themselves. They are supposed to help you do something, which in this case is provision of public goods, works, and services. We call them just public goods in general. What are these public goods? Education for children, healthcare, agriculture services, trade regulation and negotiations, and everything that you do to. So tax is supposed, but tax also has another interesting perspective, because tax is also supposed to help you regulate the business environment. Through taxation, you give concessions. Basically, it's also. But we'll have. So when the 346, it was 346, 350, 346, finally 344 billion of tax collection. Because what happens is that we've been running an incremental budget. An incremental budget means that we come and look at the things we provided last year, and then we say next year we want to provide more public services. Sometimes it's not even want to provide more. There is a demand to provide more because population has gone up.
Yep.
As you know, we are increasing our population by averagely 1 million people per year. Yep. So the population is going up. So the demand definitely will go up. And therefore, the taxation measures are supposed to help you raise more. Because the other alternatives is either you privately provision, so where people go and buy privately, or you borrow and provide for that, or you depend on donations from different actors. When this was rejected, we shoved off about 170 billion. So it's not the entire 344 billion that was put away. Remember the supplementary budget, it did not shove off the entire 344. Just shoved off about 170 billion. So we still continued with about 200 billion. The projections therefore right now are actually initially it was to raise 3.3 trillion, or rather to raise 3,300 shillings. Currently it's to raise 3,100 shillings, so 3.1 trillion. So you can see the difference is only 200 billion or 200 shillings. And therefore, it is not right to say that the 343 will just be a return of what we had. It's actually an increment.
It's an increment. Wow.
So between this year and next year, we actually, in fact, this year alone, the target from last year's collection, so last year is the year ended in June, is actually a 15% increment. So as we are talking with having shoved out the 160 billion,
still more.
It's still more.
Okay.
So government is cash strapped. And we can come, when I was last here, we discussed that the cash strap is sometimes more theoretical than practical, because there are other ways you can deal with it. But it's approaching this issue purely from a revenue problem. So it's basically saying City has decided he must drive that car, whatever that car is. He has some 3,000 shillings, it costs 5,000 bob. He's being encouraged, kuna magari ya 3,000. But he's decided, no.
I can't see those ones.
Those ones are manebo. Who drives them even? How am I supposed to even park? Where do you park such cars? So he's decided he must get to this 5,000 bob. In other words, instead of addressing his expenditure challenge, he insists now, you guys are the ones, you lazima mnichangie. You guys, if you're my buddies, you must help me raise this 2,000 bob. Because there's no way I'm sleeping without driving that. So when you approach this purely, and that's the genesis of all these bills. The bills are supposed to help you raise more money to be able to, of course, cash trap, because debt payments and everything is coming. But they and of course create some reliefs, because there are also some reliefs, and we can discuss a bit more in detail about reliefs and challenges. But that's the context in which we are coming. But remember, when people were rejecting and saying we don't want this taxation, Kenyans were not saying we don't want to pay tax. No, I can't remember. At least I was very deeply involved, including you guys running my heart up here. They were not saying they don't want to pay taxes, but they are saying, where is our money going?
Yep.
Sure.
Show us a return on the... I almost said return on investment.
This is true. It's an investment.
Only that it's a cost one. It's by law. So show us where the money is going, but also show us the prudence with which you are adjusting your own expenditure.
Yes.
So you read the reports; they all say, rationalizing, fiscal consolidation. All those are big words to simply say we need to spend more prudently. So you see now Treasury saying we are going to actually pursue measures that are going to help us spend better.
Yes.
So that's the context within which these laws are coming, and without addressing the basic question of is service delivery being improved. But then let me say, provide one more context. These laws are also coming at a time when two things are happening. One, incomes for Kenyans have not improved. If anything, because of inflation, have gone down. More people are losing jobs because of the business environment. But two, you have also introduced other extra tax measures. You have the levy, the housing levy, and SHA, which combined have already shoved up about 4.2%. 2.75% plus 1.2 is about 4.25% of salaries. So, and then you want to introduce, and remember, all these taxes are interconnected. For example, if you are proposing to charge taxation, of course, on companies that do business here, that's a good thing. But the business they do here, who do they charge that business to? It's Kenyans.
The consumer.
It's a consumer. So when you say you increase digital tax from, the 2.5% to about, I think, 1.5%. Basically, that cost will be also transferred. So all these taxes are interconnected. And especially that environment where the business environment is not necessarily improving, then you need to think, okay, so what exactly are we doing? But the last context is already the numbers from KRA are showing that income-driven taxes are going down. So income tax is targets were not met. VAT, which is basically an indicator of consumption of goods being. So that's the context in which these laws are being discussed. On one hand, government needs money.
Yep.
Perhaps there are better ways to get that money. On the other hand, the people you're trying to
get money from
also
need money.
That's the context.
Cuba. So as young people, we saw, and that was a beautiful thing that happened, that with the Finance Bill 2024, we saw many young people just going through the Finance Bill and seeking to understand and also explaining to others, this is what they're proposing on digital services, this is the impact of it, this is what they're proposing on this and the other, and this is what it means. Do we see the youth actually getting involved here? Do they know that there are 6 bills in consideration before Parliament now that could impact taxation?
Probably not as much as before. So I think one of the feelings that comes about when you find out about these new tax laws is a convoluted sense of deja vu, right? Because you understand generally that the taxes are being increased. And you also understand that, there's this kind of urgency, like Dr. Ruga has mentioned, that necessitates the government to collect more tax. But it seems as though now it's on multiple fronts, right? So now before we had one finance bill that had everything, like an omnibus bill with all the proposals. But now there seem to be 6, right? Or 4 tax-related, I think 2 general for public finance. And so I think the Gen Zs or, the young people have not been as quick to pick up on the different proposals that have been coming about, and also, so of course when you're doing an analysis or what was happening during the finance bill is that you go into the finance bill, you see the implications on the Value Added Tax Act, for example, or the Income Tax Act or the Excise Duty Act, but now of course you have to go into 3 bills and then go into 6 more laws or 6 more acts. So it is a bit more difficult. And so we've not even seen the translation of these different analysis. So it's something that we saw on TikTok and on Facebook and other platforms. So that's definitely not picked up. But of course, something is different about this time, right? So we see that the government seems a bit more willing to explain itself, to justify. So as opposed to just putting a notice and saying, submit your memorandum, as it normally does, there was, I think, a 4 or 5 page notice just explaining the proposals.
Yes.
Even if you look at the back so normally when you're reading these bills, at the back there's a memorandum that shows a summary of the proposals. So normally it's not that long, but if you look at these bills, it's actually a lot longer. So there seems to be a more willingness to explain. Also a lot more public participation opportunities. So we saw some around, the impeachment of the deputy president. We saw some around the public participation bill. We're seeing some around now the sector hearings and of course the new tax laws as well. So there seems to be a different stance from government, which is a bit confusing, especially now when you look into some of the proposals and you see a lot of it is familiar from previous times. But of course, it's a positive, something to celebrate because there are these now the opportunities. So now I think what Gen Zs and the young people did and the citizens of Kenya who were there is they set a standard for how we want to be involved in public finance, particularly. And we do hope that actually contributes to now more meaningful engagement as opposed to just being given a platform. And so we're looking forward to the reports that come out of these public participation meetings. We look forward to the different the communications we're to hear this week. I think the president to speak on Thursday, just to see what how much of what we are saying and how much of what we have been saying is actually going to find its way into policy and into these important discussions.
How much do you think it matters? And I know it's a strange question, but how much do you think it matters that essentially I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do it, I'm going to tell you with whom I'm going to do it, but the very stuff of what I'm going to do, based on what Dr. Rogo said earlier, in terms of what people are uncomfortable with, how you are using the money, what you're using it for, and how or not you choose to report on this expenditure. which is more important? Which should have more importance? That you're telling me what essentially you're going to do or not do, or the very stuff of how you spend a nation's money, which makes people poorer, puts people further into debt, just essentially erodes the very, foundation of a country's, economics. Which is more important?
It's an excellent question, because if you look at the design of Kenya's public finance, or the budget cycle, you could say, there's a lot of opportunity for involvement in the formulation part. So what you're saying is what we are going to do, right? What we plan to do, the projects we plan to have, where we plan to collect tax from, etc. But if you look at the budget implementation side, so we've passed the budget, we said we are going to put X amount to Linda Mama, we're going to put X amount to vaccinations, etc. There's very little opportunity for public participation, if any, right? So that actually calls upon citizens to, seek that information, request that information where it's not available. So in terms of the design, it seems like a lot of emphasis has been placed on what we will do, what we say we are going to do, but very little has been placed on the actual implementation. So what actually happens in practice? And I think that's definitely one of the places, areas of reform that we've not seen much conversation about. So for example, during the financial year when the government introduces a new budget, or budget revisions, you could say the supplementary budgets, historically there's not been much public participation around that, right? So the budget is alive, it's active, and money is being spent, and now there becomes a conversation on these are some of the things that were unforeseen, and these are some of the things now we need to change in the budget. There's not much conversation around that, and so what happens is that you can end up invalidating 9 months of formulation of public participation. So in terms of how it should, I think both conversations are equally important, because it's important that you have a say in how we think that things should be done, and then when things are being done, that we also have a say in whether we think our standards are being met.
Right.
So definitely both important.
Right. It's interesting, Dr. Rogo, because also just in just looking at these 6 bills, these 6 finance bills, essentially, as they are.
You can't call them 6 finance bills. Okay. 6 baby bills. Okay. Baby finance bills.
Baby finance bills. Babies grow up. If they're fed, they will grow up.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So it's interesting because there are 2 articles today. Number 1, Buddy, the CS, says cut grafts to end borrowing. Right? That's if you're going to stop, if you want us to stop borrowing money, stop corruption. And Kenyans have also warned the Treasury, do not misuse taxes. This is in line directly with what we are seeing with the 6 baby bills, right? So there is an outcry that people seem to be aware that, okay, we know that this has happened before. We're not going to allow it to continue to happen in this manner. We had a conversation before about what really needs to happen so that even, yes, we know that taxation is a form of revenue. It's necessary. But is there a way to use it responsibly and to show the people that actually the taxes that we collect, you will know that if we collect taxes and it's supposed to develop something, we will see a road, we will see 16,000 classrooms, we will see a robust health, we will see SHA operating because we've put the money there, we will see things that were supposed to happen. So people will back off and say, okay, well, that's okay, you collected this money, we can see how it's benefiting us. Is there a way to do this responsibly?
No, there is. And I think, first of all, it's not rocket science. Because one, let's call it for what it is. I mean, Buddy is using all the right words. I hope he has all the energy and the support to actually follow through with this, because graft is a big problem. Theft of public resources. We go around it, economic crimes, and then treat it with some beautiful gloves, as though it's a surgical procedure. It's not a surgical procedure. We know what needs to be done. If today you disappeared with this machine after work, the group knows what to do with you.
Yeah.
I mean, there will be no discussion. I mean, they won't call you to ask you, under what circumstances?
Do you really need it?
No, might you, what forced you, is it that your TV broke? How can we be of help? No. You will be discussing all those things from behind So unless rule of law is enforced, because what are you saying? NHIF, let me use that example. NHIF is now out but in, you don't know, whatever it is. But we did a study on NHIF, and biggest challenge with NHIF was graft. Period. It was known. I mean, Those numbers did not enter themselves that a clinic, a clinic smaller than has more
level
surgeries
4
than KNH. I mean, somebody entered those numbers,
Right.
and they entered them in a machine that has a number, that has an IP address. It is known who was using that machine. So why we don't take action on that? And then you go up the education, even in the education sector, we know who. I mean, capitation doesn't get to schools, or books are not being bought. For me, that is a starting point, because all countries we admire have one thing in common: rule of law. It's not that there are no thieves there. They are there. But they know that there are consequences. We have made graft very cheap. There is no cost. And the more you steal, looks like the more, you become the king
Glorify
of the streets, and all that. So for me, that's a starting point. But the second point is that we have systems in place, even as we address that basically, so we have a very long budget process. We have a very extensive and expensive IFMIS, Integrated Financial Management Information System. It has been altered many times, especially on two modules of it have always been a matter of debate: the procurement module and the payment module. Everything else seemed to work until there. The day of payment is either there is no electricity, the computer is down, we have to pay manually. By following through those systems, it basically means, because what it was supposed to do is, when you budget, you enter the numbers.
Yeah.
When you get the service for the service to be provided, you key in the numbers. When it comes to time for paying the contractor, you pay through the same system, because the bank details are supposed to be there, and therefore there's very minimal, knowing CT who is the accounting officer, knowing who is the procurement guy, I know a guy kind of a thing. There's not much of that.
Yeah.
Following through with that already starts to make sure. But thirdly is just the professionalism of providing the services at the cost for which. Why is it that we are crying, as much as we are crying about SHA, we are crying about the education sector, but we also have some significant absenteeism of public officers. At one study, actually, in health services, I think we were an average of about 53% absenteeism.
What?
People who don't show up in some facilities for at almost half. That's basically almost half the year.
That's ridiculous.
No, it is. It's there. The report is there. And it's so the question is, why is it that these people? You go to a health facility, because then the leading challenges, especially in healthcare, over and above the financing, which is a big one, is either the person who is supposed to provide the service is not present, or the facility itself does not have the necessary equipment, or the people cannot afford that particular service. So it's there. So you're dealing with issues that are behavioral in nature, but we are trying to make them technical and give them some new language, Yet it's a matter of rule of law. It's a matter of professionalism. It's about, standards and ethical standards of work. You cannot show up here at 6:30 every day and people are not supposed to understand. You have a contract. You have an agreement. So which for me then starts to show Kenyans that the services that we want are actually being provided, because service provision, Kenyans do not interact with public finance or with government at the point of hearing government exists.
No.
I interact with government when I take my child to school. I interact with government when I drive my car. Because that's the time when now I go, the road is either good or there's a pothole. If the road is good, I'm happy. I interact with government when I go to a police station. And I need to process. I interact with government when I go to court. That is my point. So that point of service delivery becomes the most point of interaction. That's a point of interaction. And that's a point where this government must be focusing on. But that's where people are crying.
That's it. Let's take a break. It's 24 minutes to 8. Dr. Abraham Rugo Murio is the Executive Director at Budgety Hub, and Cuba Houghton. Cuba Houghton is a budding economist. He also works at the Budgety Hub, but he's here because he's Gen Z, and we are discussing matters of public finance. So there are two things happening. Right now, the National Assembly Committee on Finance and Planning is listening to the public and taking their views on 6 amendment bills that have been proposed by the National Treasury. The Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 3 and 4, Public Procurement and Disposal Amendment Bill, the Business Laws Amendment Bill, Tax Procedures Amendment Bill, Tax Laws Amendment Bill. And from tomorrow, the National Treasury has already said tomorrow something is going to be happening. The national government will be conducting public hearings on its proposed financial year 2025-2026 and medium-term budget at the KICC from the 20th to the 22nd of November, starting at 8:30 a.m. daily. This is now where the National Treasury is coming to say this is what we want to do with next year's budget. Okay? So the budget process is actually ongoing. Are we all aware about this? Especially the majority population in this country, the youth, 35 and below. Are you aware that all these things are happening? We'll be back shortly and continue this conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.